first public hearing to order. Number one, to amend the code of the Borough of Westchester, Chapter 62, titled Garbage, Rubbish, and Refuse, to amend Section 62(1) to add definitions of dwelling unit and tote. Section 62(3) to amend certain disposal regulations that apply to public and private collection. Section 62(4) to amend certain public collection regulations. Section 62(8) to amend certain private collection regulations. Section 62(9) to reference totes, trash cans, and dumpsters. Section 62(11) to revise the regulations for dumpsters. And Section 62(12) to require containers used for recycling to be stored in the same locations as totes and dumpsters.
Thank you. The title of the ordinance summarizes what the ordinance meant. And exhibit B1, which is
That one?
is approval of publication of the hearing in the Daily Local News on May 12th of this year. And exhibit B2 is an email indicating that the proposed ordinance was submitted to the Daily Local News and the Chester County Law Library as required by law.
Darrell Cook, 506 South Walnut. The harder you make it to do something, the results may not be achieved. Small quantities of trash may be less attractive to skunks than large ones. The more frequent trash gets removed. What is the height clearance of wires in the alleys? I'm opposed to most things that reduce the amount of available parking in my area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Lisa Kearns, 312 West Middle Street. Just a question. So a property backs up to an alley and they have a chain link fence there, not a big privacy fence, but a chain link fence. Are we saying that their personal trash cans have to be 20 feet back, even though there's a barrier there? But no, it's supposed the fence is only, 5 feet off from the alley, and there's the chain link fence there. That's not considered a barrier. They have to go 20 feet in past, or 20 feet past the asphalt. Is that
No, that's not true.
okay? So they can
5 feet. 5 feet. It has to be screened on two sides. So the fence would provide two sides of screen.
Okay, so it could be 5 feet inside the fence. Okay, they'll like that a lot better. Thank you.
Which brings up another question. Are we sending out a mass email to residents about about this assuming we all pass it?
The ordinance passes. Ramsey and I have agreed to go to the Landlords Association and explain it during their either quarterly meeting or biannual meeting of all the rules. And I'm sure the landlords will all get a notification of the new ordinance so they can adhere to it. As far as the residents, I don't know what's happening with them.
Department, we just made a flyer and put it out in our rental license letter, so we can bring this up for landlords there as well. We're gonna have 2 sessions, 10 to 12 and 5 to 7 p.m. We'll put that on the website by tomorrow.
Will there be a grace period for residents, especially if we're not quite 100% sure how we're going to communicate all these updates with them so that they won't get cited? They'll just get kind of a better understanding, like what's
Yeah,
the plan?
we have the ability to do warning tickets on anything, which we typically do try to do for the first time anyone gets ticketed. So I'm sure that there's an opportunity in this as well. And then that way we have it documented within our system who's received a warning ticket. I'm also working with the software company to update so that letters will go out to the property owners automatically anytime a ticket is issued to a property, because that's been an issue with property owners not being aware if a ticket's been left on a door of a rental. So we're working on that as well for communication. So, but yeah, I think we would definitely start with warning tickets and communicate internally about timeline.
Thank you. I understand Ms. Dorsey's on the line with us. Lisa, do you have any comments or questions?
I don't, Mr. McCoy, thank you.
Okay, well, unless she texts you, we'll take that as a no. All right, I guess it would be appropriate to take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the petition as read.
I will second that motion.
Mr. Metric, please call the question.
Ms. Dorsey?
Yes,
Okay, since we can't get a verbal response from her, I'll move on to Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Travis,
Yes.
Ms. Shimoni,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
That's 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to public hearing number 2 to amend the code of the Borough of Westchester, Chapter 97, titled Subdivision and Land Development, to amend Section 97.8, titled Terms Defined, to add a definition of Borough Historic Architect, and to amend Section 97.13 to add a new subsection 97.13A4E to require review by the Borough Historic Architect for preliminary subdivision and land development plans that propose buildings or structures with heights permitted in the HO 60 or HO 75 height option overlay districts.
For exhibits, make part of the record. B1 is approve of publication in the Daily Local News on May 5th and May 12th of this year. B2 is an email sent to the Daily Local News and the Chester County Law Library, providing a copy of the proposed ordinance. B3 is a review letter from the Borough of Westchester Planning Commission dated May 5th of this year. And B4 is a review letter from the Chester County Planning Commission dated May 16th, 2025. As the title of the ordinance indicates, the ordinance would create a definition of Borough Historic Architect, and that individual or firm would be responsible for reviewing buildings proposed in the HO 60 or HO 75 overlay districts for compliance with certain architectural standards that apply to those buildings presently. So this would include at some point an appointment of a Borough Historic Architect.
Council questions or comments? Public comments? I have just one minor question. The last sentence, heights permitted in the HO 60 or HO 75. It doesn't matter whether it says or and, correct? Not being overly. Okay, good. All right. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the ordinance update.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, Mr. Metric, please call the question.
Ms. Dorsey,
yes,
Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Travis,
Yes.
Ms. Shimoni,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes.
That's 5-0.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our public hearings this evening. We will call to order the Borough Council voting session, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Shimoni. Thank you. Any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents regarding items not on the agenda? Nothing from Darrell. Lisa. Okay, thank you. We held a executive session this evening to discuss legal matters. Next announcement that the reminder that the Borough of Westchester administrative offices will be closed on Monday, May 26th for the Memorial Day holiday. Next, let's have some comments from council. Mr. McGinnis.
Thank you, everyone. So this past Tuesday, we had a primary election in Chester County and, of course, in Westchester. And in particular, there was a competitive ward race in Westchester 7, in which case Ms. Kearns won. The race was very competitive. She beat my candidate. She actually kicked my candidate's ass, to be honest with you. And I just want to wish her congratulations. It was a very hard-fought victory. You will probably be on council, and I look forward to working with you. So I just wanted to say that and shake your hand. Thing is, you know, when it comes to politics and everything, you know, it's like sports. There's a winner and there's a loser, right? And as President Biden said, you can't love your country only when you win, right? Ms. Kearns, Ms. Conforti, all of us care. That's why we're here. I firmly believe that we have the best borough. I mean, we're the envy of Chester County. I hear it so many times. You live in Westchester? And it's like, it's not with a question mark, it's with an exclamation point. And so I'm very happy to be up here. She's probably gonna be sitting over here somewhere. So again, congratulations.
Thank you. Mr. Travis.
Yeah, I haven't done this in a while, but I'll do an I'm grateful. You know, one of the things I'm really grateful for living in Ward 2 is I live on the top of a hill. I mean, we all know that 3 inches of rain fell in 2 hours on the borough. I was actually out of town. And if I wasn't, I'd be walking around Ward 2. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I live on the top of the hill. I'm horribly sad about some of the folks who were affected by the flooding. We didn't talk about it last night, but certainly I wanted to bring it up tonight. And hopefully, and even though we have done some things and we still have some plans to help with water remediation from overflowing Goose Creek and the surrounding floodplain, we really need to invigorate those conversations about storm water, especially in excesses of 3 inches in a short amount of time. We've seen this happen. I've seen it happen at least 3 times while I've lived in this ward. And when I was on the other side of town, there were rivers across that side of town too. So I want us to seriously consider in the next couple of months significant plans for improving stormwater sewers and maintenance, so on and so forth. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Ms. Dorsey can hear us or if she can speak, but if she can, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Can you hear me?
Okay. Mr. Flynn.
Greetings from the sweetest ward in the borough, the 6th Ward. I'm just so happy to hear Mr. McGinnis congratulate Lisa Kearns. I went through something very similar like that, a previous election. I ran against the mayor, and the voters knew who to vote for because I'm still sitting here. So congratulations and welcome to the team. Again, the sweetest word in the borough. We have an ice cream store opening right next to the pizza store. The name of the place is called Ice Cream. The fella has very limited words. He also has pizza and he also has steaks. So he parcels his words out very well. The ice cream store is going to open right next to New Haven Pizza, probably next week. The second one is Ula, a Asiad acai bowl. They use honey, so it's a sweet place, where the old classic diner used to be. They opened up 2 weeks ago, and they're doing very well with the fresh fruits and stuff there in that spot. And lastly, I want to bring to everybody's attention who's listening, on June the 6th, which is Friday, at the Uptown Theater, there's tickets still available for the Night Out with Frank Sinatra. It starts at 5:30, and then the tribute is at 7:30, and it benefits the children over at Chester, the care center on Matlack Street. Wendy Wallace does a great job over there. It's going to be a fun night. We've purchased 4 tickets for the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. They're going to walk up from St. Agnes, so it's going to be an exciting night for them. So I put them right behind me. That way I'd stay in line again. What the care center does is supports the efforts for local children that have trauma, education, and essential services to children and families in need. It's been there for over 44 years, and Wendy Wallace and the team over there does an excellent job. So it's Sinatra night, Frank Sinatra. If you grew up with me, always Friday night with Frank, with Sid Mark, and Sunday, and you couldn't get through a weekend with Grandma without Sinatra. So it's June the 6th, 5:30 at the Uptown Theater, and I think the tickets are $45. So it's going to be a fun night. So try to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Shimon.
Ms. Shimoni.
Hi, so first, similar sentiments to my cohort up here. Congratulations, Lisa. Congratulations, Brian, for winning again, and Jerry and Stephen and all the candidates who were successful this past election. And again, thank you guys for running. Thank you guys for caring. Thank you for being here. It is great to have so many people interested in supporting our borough and being a part and taking part and moving things along. So, and it was, and as contentious as it could have been at times, it was nice to see democracy at play in the 7th Ward and choice for the voters and all of those things. And it'll be nice. I hope that we just continue to see more and more people wanting to get involved with what we're doing here and for the borough and keeping things alive. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Another thing I wanted to say was I've thought about this for like 2 months now, and I never say it. Going back to the guy on Church Street that was having a mental health crisis and the shooter and everything, the police had to go to, what was that now, over a month ago. I just want to thank the Uber driver. If you think about the story, the reason the police knew what was going on was because the Uber driver heard the guy that he was driving say a few things in the car, and he's like, he sounds like he needs help. And he actually, from the story that I understand that I read, I think from the Inquirer, he actually called the police. And I don't know who that guy's name was, or woman, it could have been a woman driver. I don't know who it was, but thank you to that person. You're a hero. They're probably not watching, but I think that they were a bit of a hero that day, calling and getting people alerted to the situation in advance so that it could be taken care of and that no major tragedies really occurred and things were, I don't know, handled.
Thank you. First thing, Bernie, now that you mentioned the IHMs being at this event.
Yes.
I'm a little traumatized after 12 years. I'm not sure if I'm going to go to the event now.
My fingers.
I would like to say to Nicole's point, I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm so proud that our police force has decided to hire a social worker to be part of the force to help out people that are in similar circumstances. And lastly, I hope everyone has a great Memorial Day holiday. Thank you, everyone who went out and voted. Okay, with that, I did neglect, I need to amend the agenda to include an item under new business. Motion to schedule a hearing to consider a 5-year renewal plan for the Westchester bid for July 16th, 2025 at 6:30 PM. Do we need a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion
Second.
to amend the agenda.
Second.
Mr. Metrick, please call the question.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shimoni?
Yes.
Mr. Travis?
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
And Mr. McCoy?
Yes.
Mr. Metric, can you hear me?
Okay, next, we will move on to reports and presentations. First report by Jim Cherry, annual report of the Westchester Borough Planning Commission.
Okay, good evening, Borough Council. Jim Cherry, Planning Commission Chair. First, I just want to second Mr. McGinnis's best borough in the county. I agree with that. So anyway, just a little bit of a background. Some of the members of the Planning Commission attended some courses put on by the county in planning and community planning. And we learned a couple things. One of them was that we actually owed an annual report to the governing body or to Borough Council. So we're fortunate to have a very exceptional person, Matt Clapp, who was able to put together that report and consolidate the whole the year into one succinct report. It's basically broken into two sections. I want to just highlight section 3 and section 4. It's the subdivision and land development agendas, as well as the ordinance and community planning. So if we go to the next page, there's an executive summary of that first portion, that Saldo applications. These were the applications that took place and were reviewed in 2024, what phase they were in, the recommendation of the PC, and when the vote took place. The second portion is, again, different procedures and ordinances and amendments, community planning issues that were reviewed by the PC, a lot of them in conjunction with smart growth. So a lot of these ordinances have they've been adopted. I think we just had one today, which was for the Borough Historic Architect. Some of them are still presently in work. So, and we have a couple moving forward. So that's the general overview of what's in that report, the meeting minutes, everything that's consolidated into one piece, and it's going to live there. That was supposed to be due March 1st, but we didn't learn about it until February 28th. So it was a little late this year, but so May 22nd it is. I think next year we'll try to get this thing done, wrapped up at the end of the year, go through our edits and then make sure it gets here before March 1st again. But I just want to at least, again, recognize Matt Clapp's work in pulling all this together. When we looked around to look for a precedent for an annual report like this, we were unable to find or locate anything online. So I think this really is setting a new bar, a high bar for other municipalities to be able to take a look at this, copy it, replicate it in their own way. So, but second, thanks for reimbursing the members that were able to participate in those classes. They've been very informative, and I think they really helped us a lot to understand what's going on.
Well, I just learned last night, we've got a bucket of money for this kind of stuff. So if there are any other classes you guys want to go to, we got like $10,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are some in the
Under
fall.
boards and commissions, yeah, we
Before
have
the historic
funding
commission.
there.
Take-
Okay, excellent. Yeah, actually, there is one more in the fall, and then we'll have completed it. So were they were calling your name at the last one?
I know, I couldn't attend like 3 of them because
kept-
I scheduled them like 2 or 3 months ago and then
Okay.
couldn't do it. Hopefully I'll get to the ones in the fall.
Well, everybody knows your name now anyway.
Thank you for your hard work. Appreciate it.
My privilege. Yep.
Would ask you stay up here.
I'm glad to. Yes.
Yeah, our next report or presentation. Been looking forward to this, heard a lot about it. Traditional patterns of building homes in Westchester. Thomas Doherty, also from the
Thank
Planning
you.
Commission.
Thank you, Borough Council. Yeah, my name is Thomas Doherty, 329 North High Street. We'll this out of here. So when I remember when I joined Planning Commission, we had just started COVID. And so it was virtual, but the one question I remember from you all was, have you read the comp plan? I think Bernie, you asked that. And I actually had read the comp plan because I was joining right when we were kind of in the final stages of the zoning update. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what was the RFP? What was the purpose of this? And then going back to that document was actually really inspiring, was part of the reason I wanted to join the Planning Commission anyway. So I just wanted to, I have a few quotes from that because I think that they kind of outline our path forward as Planning Commission and the way that we can think about moving forward in a borough. Do you mind going back to that one before there? There we go. So the purpose of a community's comprehensive plan is to look to the future and design a roadmap in the form of policies, recommendations, and strategies for future development, redevelopment, conservation. While the plan itself is not a regulation, it should be used to inform future laws such as zoning. So that's the very beginning of our comp plan. And comp plans across the country, they're funded usually by grants, and then they sit on a shelf and they collect dust, unfortunately. And so I think I feel so lucky to be here, in Westchester, like you all. And I think this Planning Commission is trying to be a little bit more proactive. We are too small to have our own planning department. And so who's there to pursue the goals and the vision of that comp plan? So we're trying to step up and do that. Next. Let's go back one. Ooh. There we go. So, okay, right after that quote, they say the underlying premise of this plan, the comp plan, is that new development and preservation are complementary elements of a planning strategy that will support economic health while maintaining the character and sense of place that defines Westchester. And so that strategy, I think, this is 2016, right, when this comp plan is put together. I think we're in the kind of initial stages of forming that strategy, because I don't think there's that strategy in place right now. And so I kind of see that as an opportunity to step up and do that. And when we had that 2020 zoning update, a lot of the things that we were looking to the comp plan for, we were bringing up to that team. And essentially they kept saying, hey, these are too big. Put these in another bucket and then address these after we do this zoning update. So they went forward with that zoning update with the understanding that, yeah, the comp plan outlines a bunch of some key initiatives that we need to pursue after that zoning update. Okay, so we need to come up with that strategy. And then I like to say you get what you zone for. So on the left, this is illegal due to our dimensional standards and our zoning. At least a lot of these homes are. The zoning got adopted in the 60s. That's when we first got our use-based zoning with our dimensional standards. And essentially, there were a lot of federal grants at the time, so we were adopting kind of the suburban Chester County zoning standards onto Westchester. And we were blessed to have leadership that back in, I think, 1988 kind of reversed a lot of that. And so you see that the 88 zoning updates and then everything that went with that, we got the HARB then, really make a concerted effort to preserve our town. And I'm so grateful for that leadership. However, we still have a lot of the same standards from the 60s. And part of that is, what you can do by right and what's still illegal to build. So on the right, a developer is going to do what's easy to do, what they can, legally do. So this is what we're getting. This is what we're not getting on the left. Next. So land use and housing, if there was a theme to the comp plan, it's land use and housing. So this is the beginning of that chapter. The primary goals of the land use and housing plan are to ensure that new development contributes to the small town character of the borough and provide for a range of housing types to support different types of households and range of income levels. And so we all know Pinckney Hill Commons, so grateful for that development. And that second half of that sentence, it's got an A+ for, right? Diversity of those income levels, 51 new affordable homes in our town, and really grateful for the project. Next. Oh, back one. But that first part of that sentence, what's the small town character of the borough? Is that contributing to the small town character of the borough? Without, critiquing the mission of Pinckney Hill Commons, we have a structure here which is detrimental to the overall character, where they're talking about that small town character of the borough that we're chasing. People are saying Westchester, like we want to be in Westchester. That's not contributing. And we see that over and over. When was the last time you had new development that contributes? It's almost always detrimental. Next. And so I just went to the comp plan and I just took little screenshots of all the images in the first, like half of it that was talking about the vision making and things like that. If it had to do with like a place or a building, I took a screenshot. So there you go, right? None of that's new development, right? This is all our historic fabric. Next. And then I like to go to just social media. What do people like? What do people take pictures of? Do you know what the most photographed street in the United States is? Very close. If you were to Google it, I think you would come up with Acorn Street in Beacon Hill in Boston. Very similar to Elfreth's Alley. And Acorn Street is this narrow, charming brick townhouses, and it looks like it could be in our borough. And so, you type Westchester in Instagram, and then this Westchester Views, which I didn't purchase all these. These are screenshots from their website, so I appreciate all the beautiful photos they're taking. But it took me to this place, and I just wanted to highlight, like I was just taking them in order. Screenshot. What do people love? We all know what we love. This is not what's being built right now. Next. So I just wanted to quickly go through. So how have we been doing with our recent developments? So back to that sentence, ensure that new development contributes to the small town character of the borough, provide for a range of housing types, and should follow the traditional grid street and alley pattern. So I just kind of graded us real quick. So on following the street and alley network in this development over here, this is over by Pinckney actually, that's a solid B- there. I mean, I'm not sure why they did it that way. You're not really following the street and alley network. Unfortunately, the Rubenstein's building is going to do a lot worse. We're going to have one dead end street and two dead end alleys. Okay, range of housing types, there's not a whole lot of diversity there, not great. But when it comes to the character of the borough, that's a solid F, right? Like the lick and stick stone on the first floor is not helping out anybody. The vinyl siding, right? This could be anywhere. This is not contributing to the character of the borough. Next. Market Street Flats. Again, I guess it follows the street and alley network. Nobody wants that really tall, super flat wall. So let's give it a B. I don't know what kind of range of housing types are in there, but I appreciate the fact that it is bringing housing to our borough. Again, this is not contributing to the character of the borough. This is detrimental to the overall character. Next. And we're seeing this right over and over, which is part of the reason why we're presenting today, and I appreciate that opportunity. We have a bunch of these buildings coming up, and Mr. Burke over here has talked about the externization of our borough, and you can see that, right? And I'm not, I'm critiquing its inability to contribute to the character of the borough with, I hope, not just critiquing the projects. I appreciate the investments in the borough. I appreciate the housing opportunities that it provides, the new residents. John O'Brien spoke about the need for a development like this. So I appreciate that. I respect that. But I also want to say, if we're doing a B on the first two, we're really failing on this last one. Next. So we know what we want. This is what we want to see built. This is what the comp plan talks about, that this is what we as residents want. And so I just want to, the caveat of investment in town is good. New units within walking distance of downtown are good. John O'Brien wants those new units. I respect that. Our walkable downtown needs those new units, but we also need to open the door to buildings which can contribute to the character of the borough, because I think that door is shut. So this isn't about closing off a door, actually, even though I would like to close that door a little bit to the Burger King projects. But we want to, as Planning Commission, open up the door to some of the projects you're looking, or the buildings you're looking in front of us. Next. So the number one critique people have is we can't build nice things anymore. They cost too much. We're dealing with a housing crisis. We can't focus on character when we're dealing with a lack of housing. And I think that we are dealing with a housing crisis. This isn't the first time we're dealing with a housing crisis. And if there was a second theme to the comp plan, it is attainability. So again, from the comp plan, the relative relatively high price of owner-occupied housing limits opportunities for community professionals, including teachers, professors, police officers, and others from purchasing housing in the borough. With a growing senior population, elderly residents will likely find it increasingly difficult to stay in the borough. This isn't the first time we've dealt with a housing crisis. So I pulled up this. These were built in the 1870s. This is on Washington Street. And here you have a community activist leader, a politician who was also a developer, a small scale developer. He's not building 200 units at a time, which is what we see now. He's building a handful, and these are known as workforce housing. So if you read the plaque, walk by it sometime, it's a great little testament to, in the 1870s, how local leaders were dealing with a housing crisis. Next. Thanks. And I just had a couple data points here. This is from Chesco. Housing units sold in Westchester in 2023. I just want to look at those prices because we are dealing with a new reality. These prices are not what they were 10 years ago. And so I want to just look at detached, attached, so and then these average prices down here at the bottom. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that even on the right, 21 apartments, and those are apartments or condos, but look at the price tag that's associated with these. I think very often the assumption is we can't build nice things. Apartments are the only feasible way of bringing new housing. But the complexity of these buildings, and Jim could talk to this more coherently than I can. We're both working as architects, but Jim does this on a daily basis. The complexity of these larger structures ups this per square foot cost of these units. Eli's, single bedroom, 600 square foot units over there are way more expensive per square foot than anything else that's being built in the borough as any other residential building because of the garage, because of the elevators, because of all the code constraints and all that. So
per studio.
So Jim is saying that's probably 400 per studio apartment. So keep that in mind to construct. So it's not as if it's drastically cheaper to keep these doors, to build these rental units. So on the bottom, it was just how many new housing units were built in Westchester in 2023, grand total of 1. And then housing units built in Chester County, and I just look at the multifamily total in Chester County, 411 in 2023, 774. And I just think, how many new units do we have just in Westchester? So while I appreciate that investment, we're adding a lot of new rental units, and we've had one, new house built in 2023. Next. So like I said, it's a new reality. And so I did a very quick pro forma just to think about the cost per unit. Now, Jim, I knew I was being conservative with these numbers. And so I was running my pro forma, because I do this too, as about 300 a unit. And I'm looking at the 137 units of the Burger King property and a future, if you were to do townhouses instead. But I just want to point out that the rent, let's say per unit of 2,300, that's probably low for a single bedroom in our town. And then for new construction for a home, you probably are looking at 800,000. And, the all-in cost per unit, something like that. Next. And what I want to compare it to is I appreciate that rental option. After 5 years, the total out of pocket for somebody is going to be 138 versus 448. But one of the realities that goes hand in hand with that is that if we do have that single family unit, you're going to get 222,000 in equity, where all these new units are siphoning value and capital out of our town into Maryland, into BlackRock, into Vanguard funds. And so I know you guys are wanting to open up more doors to home ownership, but this is a key reason for that. There are real barriers. So when the critics are saying we can't have nice things, don't even think about this, I say we should at least be opening up the door. And there are financial reasons for that. Next. So in conclusion, almost done. Next. Right now we're getting this. Next. So this is what we all know we want to see built. Next. It would be good for the borough to see more working class development like this on the top left by By the way, it's not working class development. I mean, what is working class development? It was a term they used back in the day. But that's the Washington one there on the right, and then the Darlington, and then actually Ray Ott's development, which is just right next to the Burger King site. Next. And less like this. This is what we're getting at Rubenstein's. I put this in CAD and I traced out that corridor. That's over 1,000 continuous feet of corridor. That's what working class, housing looks like today. You see that hallway there? Like, what's a mile? 5,280? 1,000 feet of continuous corridor. I think one of the things that upset me the most when I first saw this plan is that there is one front door. This is 2 blocks, right? One street dies into it, and then 2 alleys die into it. There's one door on the top side, and then there's a door with no windows at each of the cores. So you can kind of pick out the cores at the different intersection, right, with the elevators. Next. Right now, this is incentivized. So this is the new Market Street project, 185 units. And on the bottom left, Darlington, this is non-conforming. We can't build this right now. Next. But when zoning allows townhouses, we get the one on the left, not the one on the right. Next. So how do we move forward? And I'd say first, how do we legalize buildings with the dimensional characteristics of the buildings that we know that we like? And then 2, how do we do that first one while ensuring that what we get, that we get buildings that contribute to the character of the borough, as opposed to those other townhomes which are detrimental? So just back to that comp plan quote, the underlying premise of this plan is that new development and preservation are complementary elements of a planning strategy. And I think that's what we're finally putting together now. And I just took a picture out of my office window, and I was just struck by the number of non-conforming aspects of these homes over here. So from a lot area point of view, they're non-conforming because the last lot on the far side is 100 feet wide, and the next one is 50 feet. And then you get 3 at 18, and then you get 1 at 20, and then you get another one at 50, right? So that's non-conforming because we have a median lot size. Lot width, I said 4, but it's actually 3. I went back and measured those. 3 of them are non-conforming because they're 18 foot wide, which is very typical for working class, smaller homes. We've got lots of 14s, 16s, and 18s in our town. And then in the 1960s, they said, hey, minimum lot size is 20, and we haven't changed it since then. We're not, it's not meeting the side yard requirements. It is actually meeting the rear yard requirements. I went back and measured and the lot lines jog, so I take that one back. But the building coverage is more than 45%. So it's just a lot of the characteristics of a beautiful street frontage, and it's not following our codes. We run into these situations all the time where we have the codes in front of us, but we also know that everything that we want to see and most of our town are non-conforming to those codes. Next. And so what we talked about, we would love to pursue this project. And one of the ways that we're talking about this, and I think the way that could make the most sense here, is by looking at what are these contributing resources. We already have a definition in our zoning code, contributing resources. Back in 1988, they did a whole study of the town. We instituted the HARB, we instituted the HARB district, and we've been updating those contributing resource maps since then. So that's not actually a page from Westchester, that's from Philadelphia. But what they used to do with UPenn is they would send the architecture students into town and they would document these different buildings. And the point that I would make here is that if we knew what we wanted to see, we could document here's a 14-foot wide townhouse that we all love. We'd all love to see more of. We know the citizens would love to see more of. We can have a 1-page document saying, if you build this, you can build it in this location. That way we can predict it. So as opposed to saying, hey, we're just going to lower our dimensional standards to 14 feet, you're going to get a bunch of Lennar, vinyl, lick and stick stone kind of stuff. Okay, so there's that. On the other side, we have these 2 different districts, historic districts, actually kind of 3, but it's 2 in effect. And Ray Ott was instrumental in creating the larger historic district map. And I remember talking to him about it, and he said, we had the opportunity to put it on a map. We haven't utilized that yet. So there's really no teeth to anything. We're not using it for anything, but it exists as an overlay district, essentially. And so we could piggyback on these historic districts. And next, we could say, hey, we could identify 3 or 4 of these contributing buildings, We could come up with something, we could have a community thing, we could show you and say, we believe that the comp plan is saying, you know, this 14, this 16, whatever it is, brick, the windows look like this, you know, the doors look like this. If we could see more of that, everybody would be happy. And then we could tie that to a plan that then when developers coming forward, we're not saying, hey, anybody can go down to 16 feet wide. It's no, if you build something that contributes to the character of the borough, then you can go down to 16 foot wide or 14 foot wide. Then you know what happens? Why? One of the big reasons why they went to 20 is because theoretically on 20 feet, you can get 2 off-street parking spots. So if you're going to do a 16 foot wide brick townhouse that looks like this with a stoop that looks like that, maybe then you can have one off-street parking spot, especially if it's going to be small, right? If it's 14 foot wide. Next. So I just have a couple recent projects. And I just want to point out, we appreciate these projects and they also don't conform. So this project right here is where Yarnell's garage is. It had to create an HOA to avoid our zoning. So we have minimum lot widths, right? And these buildings were a combination of 18 and 22s. And so rather than, okay, we have minimum lot widths. The buildings don't conform to that. So it's an HOA. This is a kind of a loophole that we have. And this is why all the townhouses you see built are part of these HOAs. Median lot area, that's another one. They wouldn't be able to do it with the rest of the lots on that, especially because Yarnell's was so large, it was going to offset the rest of it, kind of like the other block I was pointing out. You can't subdivide to create land that does not front a primary street. So if you see in the bottom of that image, you actually see houses facing both the street, Washington Street, and Patton Alley, but we have in our zoning that you can only build houses, or you can only have lots like that that front the primary street. And so to build like this, which is going to create a really beautiful courtyard, it's going to be great for the town. We appreciate a project like this. They have to do an HOA to avoid the zoning. And you can just see the neighbors. We kept telling the developer, go look at your neighbors for a precedent. Well, the neighbors aren't complying. It's non-conforming. Their side yards are less than the 10 foot required. Their lot widths are less than 20. They don't have the off-street parking. Next. And I just want to point out, so we just saw this a couple nights ago. They showed us their front elevation. I think we all and I don't want to say anything negative about this developer. I think that they've been really wonderful, but they don't know what we're looking for. And so everybody just swallowed real hard and tried to like stay calm. But we don't want those buildings built. That's not going to contribute to the character of the borough. Even though we have these, you know, they're doing the townhouses, we appreciate that. And so if we could point them to the neighbors, so I just kind of took a shot there where you can see the neighbors, you have this Georgian, you know, regular rhythm of window and door. You have a consistent eave line. You have a breakdown of building that if we had a page, we could show them and say, no, this is actually what we're looking for. You know, the developer doesn't know. And this developer would love to know what the town is looking for. Next. This is obviously Ray Otts, and he had to deal with all the same, you know, issues. He said he fought for a long time and had to get a million variances. Next. And so this is the Burger King site. And what I did is I just sketched out, okay, what if Ray Ott were to develop the Burger King site? And this is probably a lot more townhouses in density than the neighbors would want. But it's currently 137 units, podium parking. And I'm showing if Ray Ott were to do this in the same manner, he would have 37 townhouses on there. And you could see how he would drive up his non-conforming, you know, the alley that he created there is actually a private drive. And technically he can't front it. That's one of the variances he would have had to get. But if you go, do you mind just going back one? What a great little street. He was measuring Darlington to get this, right? Non-conforming, the street doesn't conform, the buildings don't conform. Next. And so this is looking at, hey, if we were to open up that door to say, we approve of these handful of 3 or 4 or 5, you could add to it, buildings, which we know we all love. And a developer like Pete could say, okay, I'll take those 5 buildings and I'll figure out a way to arrange them on the site. Is that going to be what everybody wants? No, but it's a hell of a lot less houses than are there now. It's a lot less traffic, and it's a lot more home ownership and equity that's going to stay in town. Next. So this is the last slide. So just to reiterate, while the plan itself is not a regulation, it should be used to inform future laws such as zoning. And then the underlying premise of this comp plan is that new development and preservation are complementary elements of a planning strategy. And we feel like we're just starting in on that strategy now.
Thanks. Just a, yeah.
I just have first of all, thank you, gentlemen, for that. One of the things I wrote down was the word stupid, because how we can't build row homes anymore, or it seems prohibited in one of those slides. I think that's ridiculous by nature. And the other mention you mentioned about lot size, right? What's the current regulation for lot size in the borough?
Depends on where you are.
Yeah. The minimum lot width is 20 feet. And what we were
So
asking for
that's-
was some
and that's
relief.
that first side when I was saying this is illegal. It has to do with so many of our, if you were to walk down Darlington, that where was a picture of Darlington and measure the street frontages.
I'm on Bernard.
They're all
Totally familiar. And when you bring that up, right, it comes to the building and housing, a supply and demand thing, what we're seeing right now, there's not enough homes, right? That's why home values spike, you got interest rates, you have all that going on. And I mentioned before to my colleagues about lot size and what the city of Houston did. I don't know if you're familiar with what they did, but they like dramatically reduced lot size to make these homes more affordable. I don't know if we could do that, obviously, and these home builders are going to build up and everything. They're going to build the type of homes that they want to build. And you mentioned some recommendations, which are great. But do you think, though, it's practical on what they're going to do something like what we want them to do?
Well, I think just as a starting point and a clarification, we're not ending what we're presently doing. What we're proposing is an overlay district, much like the height overlay, but the opposite direction, where there's an overlay that allows the exception at the bottom end of it, which allows that smaller, denser type of a project. And I think what's important, and a couple keywords, was preservation. I think preserving Westchester, the borough, what's great about it. The borough took hundreds of years to build, one little home at a time. Sometimes it was homes spread apart, and then there was a lot of infill homes added to it. Or maybe there was a larger estate building that then had collected a lot of little buildings in and around it. So that kind of growth over a longer period of time is significantly different than coming in, acquiring and consolidating multiple parcels, and then just maxing it out to the envelope that's available to them.
And to that point, what about with the overlay district, right? I mean, I don't know how many homes you could build in there in that area. But when I look at the borough, I only look at there's one real plot of land that could be developed and built, and that's the Elks Club.
Sure.
So wouldn't it be, to me, I mean, I don't know how you can do it. Maybe rising that height to a certain period or a certain requirement. So it's not as low as what the overlay district is, but it would be allowable for the potential to build new homes in an area like that.
Sure. I think, I mean, there's no right or wrong. There's just good and better. And so everything is kind of a relative thing. You look at the mechanics building, it's 6 stories. And the most unfortunate part of it, it's a beautiful building. I think the proportions are beautiful, the detail and the quality, the texture. I think the unfortunate part is the big cooling tower and antennas that sit on top, because the silhouette that cuts the edge of the sky, that's not that nice. When you're at street level, what's important about with that, it's about preserving daylight. The trees, the scale of the sidewalks, the materials, like Thomas had mentioned. It's one thing to say, talk about a density and a quantity. It's another thing to talk about the quality. While building smaller, this should allow people to improve on, hey, now it's brick sidewalks, it's granite curbs, it's brick facades, it's a real decent simulated divided light window. It's a little more detailing in the cornices, that kind of stuff. Those are the things that we want to make sure to preserve. I moved in a house. It's 100 years old. It was here before I got here. You know, I completely meticulously have been restoring it, and it's going to be somebody else's house when I leave. I'm just a part-time caretaker for this property. And the thing is, we have a borough like that. We have a borough that has great historic contributing buildings and neighborhoods and streets. A lot of it has to do with scale. A lot of it has to do, there's a lot of pieces that do it. It's not just a style, or it's not just a building. So there's more to it. I look at things that contributed to the borough and I go, you know what, Porch Fest was awesome. And that's the kind of community that was, I'm like, that's the community event for a community. And that kind of stuff really helps add to it. The backdrop of having the buildings, the porches, the streets, the trees, and the people meandering through it, that kind of stuff is rich that you can't replace somewhere else. It doesn't happen out in Honeybrook. So we take these classes that we talked about that you'd sent us to, and it's amazing. There's over 2,500 different municipalities in Pennsylvania, right? Just in Chester County at that class, there were 30 people. Funny how everybody else's issues are significantly different than the boroughs, right? Honeybrook, we need to preserve 10-acre lots, and at 10 acres, that's awesome. You're listening to people with no less than two acres, that kind of stuff. Anytime a house gets built, they're having a conniption. What we're doing here and what we're talking here is not about restricting any of that stuff. We're actually giantly in favor of it. Yeah. So I think there's things that are important to see, and the comp plan talks about improving owner occupancy within homes is important. Why is that important? You can have individuals that live in a home for 20, 30, 40 years. They're slowly, meticulously gardening, worrying, painting, taking care of a place. And it shows in those homes. If you have absentee investor that's bought a property, maybe they're just more or less interested in collecting rent. That's what starts adding to the erosion or the quality of those. You could just look in West Philadelphia, look in Coatesville, you can look at some of those areas that they're beautiful homes if you can look through the decay. And it's kind of like trying to create incentives to incentivize why or how people get into home ownership and how that could happen. Maybe it's that ADU, which we talked about. Maybe it's that allowing a parent to slide in. Maybe it's a smaller lot size. So it's those kinds of things that we've been trying to discuss and find out, hey, how's this happen? Because it's truly impossible for a younger individual to start competing with investors. That's the problem with the Airbnbs. You have a property comes up, it's wins in that. Somebody with very deep pockets, they're cash buyers, they're instantly purchased.
Can I just for the Airbnb, it's a problem with Airbnb when it's not owner occupied.
Sure.
Right. If with the owner occupied aspect of, like, say, an Airbnb or being able to rent a house, that actually works in reverse, right? Like if you were to say you can't have any Airbnb in town unless that's your primary primary home, and actually works in reverse. But I just want to, do you want to reiterate what was the concern? Can you reiterate your concern again? Because I think part of it had to do with just like, is this even a feasible thing for developers? Is that correct? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, sure.
Build, period.
Yeah.
But when you look at like let's say like the Elks Club, if that ever came to fruition where that was sold, to me, I think that your plan would be absolutely wonderful, and I think that would work. You would get homes that would be at a much more below market value, much more competitive for people to live in, I think. And because I think, I mean, that's now the problem. I mean, that goes back to 2008, goes back, to what happened in 2020. There's not enough homes being built. And to your point, what you mentioned in Honeybrook, maybe it is, maybe it isn't good, but maybe we protect probably too much open space.
So I hear you. Right now, we can't do what is on the screen right now. And I remember initially going to Pete when he was proposing his project and saying, hey, have you considered a townhouse option? I just want to sketch something real quick for you. And he said, there are too many. It's funny that, it's not funny, but at the time he said, I'm opening myself up to lawsuits if I do anything that's not by right. I just want to do the by right thing, the thing that has no variances, the thing that's really straightforward. So if you write a pro forma for this, there's a lot about, Jim and I do this on a daily basis, this kind of project, both. And so, the other one, you're going to you build it up. There's a lot of complexities to it. There's a lot of costs to it. There's a lot of, let's say there's 2.5 the profit of that thing versus this, but you're also probably looking like 6-7 year time horizon, even just to build, get it rent, get it stabilized, and then sell it again after 5 or 7 years. Where this, you can phase it. You're talking about, the IRC building code, not the IBC building code. So there's a lot less expertise when it comes to the building crews you're using, your per square foot costs. You could phase a development like this. So I think that there are actually a lot of financially viable options for something like this. And I think the other thing that is true too is it's different kind of capital that can come into play. These are all going to be selling through, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. You're selling to a different buyer, and you could also have these developed by smaller pieces of capital. Like that big project, Pete's not bringing in his own capital. The landowner's probably not even bringing in his own capital. The landowner's somewhere in Maryland somewhere. Like it's all these outside forces, and they're going to get, outside equity to come in. Whereas the way the borough traditionally developed was a couple buildings at a time. And I do think that if we can open this door back up, we can make that a little bit more straightforward. Because you're right, the Elks, that's a large chunk of land. But here's one, and I think that they're little pieces, which is how the borough developed. It was like 2 buildings, and then 3. Like the lot that I had the picture of was like 100-foot wide lot, then a
West
50,
Washington,
then 18.
South Matlack,
Yeah,
those areas.
exactly.
I think there's a middle housing, there's a whole lot of housing types that are missing. All right. And we want to, right. We're just not doing it. Right. But there's triplexes and quads. But if you looked at the most efficient right now, in other areas, we'll do a town over a flat. So 3 stories with a wood frame. All right. There's the most efficient from a density standpoint is just a single stair of 4 flats per floor for 3 floors. All right. So that's why we've chosen to cut off at 12 units with a parking requirement, because if you can build a small little building like that, and that is something that can infill smaller areas and have a little bit of a higher density, but then gain the economic advantage. It's not part of this, but it's that kind of stuff. Sure.
We should be having those discussions. This is just like a smaller
Yeah.
piece of the pie. Like this only touches on something. For example, like if you were to do what Jim just suggested, you could take that mortgage that's very high, that it was like the 400 versus the 130 or whatever after 5 years. You can split that in half, if you have the 2-unit solution that you just talked about, which is the 3-story, there's a basement unit down below. If you walk through like DC, Georgetown, that's how everything is. Charleston is like that. You've got all the ground floor units were separate, and then you have the owner's unit on top. So the second floor is actually, the 10-foot ceiling floor. It's just a building tech that we used to have all the time that we're not doing it.
Triplexes and yeah. So anyway, in all of that, what we're asking for is to be able to kind of look at adding an overlay district that
Maybe piggyback on an
Right,
existing one,
right,
right? We have
right.
the
we have those historic, the town center, and as well as that second one that was already defined, and then be able to explore the opportunity to look at more right-sized opportunities or developments for individuals.
I think what you guys are doing, gentlemen, is great. I think run with it, and I think that we would probably be all supportive of it, obviously, because we always do talk about new home ownership within the borough.
Yeah, the fact that, we couldn't do what's already here is, it's why a lot of us moved here. I love the mix of, twins, row houses, singles, whatever. And the fact that we couldn't do that. So I'm glad you're making people aware of what it means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, I'm going to talk for a second. Sorry. I mean, I've seen previews of this before, and I love it. And I can't wait till you guys have something to come to us that we can approve and kind of move forward and really get this rocking and rolling and give the abilities for the developers to be able to lean into this. The only feedback that I'm going to give you right now is when you showed the picture of Washington Street, Bernie and I both looked at you and we're like, oh, that looks pretty good. And then you're like, oh, that's an F. And so you were like, oh, yeah, you didn't like it. So I guess my point is when you're considering the character of the building piece, don't get too prescriptive, because you can still hold the character of the borough with buildings that have different character. I mean, I get you with you don't want everything being just siding slapped on, but that didn't look like that. And it looked kind of interesting and cool and also kind of fun. So don't necessarily get caught up in it having to look exactly like those old, really cool buildings, which they all are. because there's new ways to do really cool buildings too. And that's what we want. And that's what kind of preserves the character. So keep that in mind when
Fair
you're
enough.
thinking about that piece, but
Appreciate that feedback. And I would just say, I do think one of the key aspects of affordability and the character of our borough is durability. And that's something that we lost. I'm living in a house that was built in the 1860s. It's actually just double wide, it's triple. We actually have a lot of doubles, some triples. And it's plastered directly on those exterior brick walls. And it's worth moving into, it's worth buying, it's worth renovating. What we're building over and over again, even when we're dealing with, we're concerned about affordability and attainability, which obviously we should be. If what we're doing is building a 30-year building, which is what we're typically doing, we're addressing the problem of the next 30 years, but not past that. And it's important to address this 30 years, but it's also important to be building buildings that can stand the test of time. So to your point, because you were just saying, hey, let's not get too hung up on the architectural details. You're talking to architects. So I appreciate that. And either way, we're going to be offering you some plans, and that's when you're going to say, don't be so prescriptive. Like, we'll lower the standards or whatever. But I do think that durability is so key to these kinds of houses, and that they can age over time, and that you can develop them and take care of them. And that's why even when they were built, they all look the same, but you go to Portico Row now and they've all been maintained slightly differently. So that durability is something that we haven't built in forever, and we need to start doing that again. Financially, from a sustainability point of view, we just had that conversation with this sustainability director. The most sustainable building is the existing building. This new construction that dies every 30 years, that's terrible for the planet. That's terrible for our town. These buildings are going to be Class A apartments for 10 years, maybe 7. And then they're going to slide to Class Bs. And then we're going to be in 30 years from now, they're going to be Class C apartments. They're going to be problematic. There's going to be huge issues. I hear about Market Street flats already having all kinds of internal issues. So we need to up our standards, I think, from a building point of view.
well, looking forward to.
Thank you very much.
It's all back. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the Borough Manager's report.
Good evening. I know what it's like. I know what it must be like, have been like now to go on stage after Jimi Hendrix finished his set. So we put out the fire on the guitar. So I didn't plan it this way, but I'm going to talk about 3 important planning efforts that are underway in the borough. So I really enjoyed the presentation I heard. It reminded me a lot of the work I used to do. And I think there's a lot of potential for the themes that you bring up, and it was very design focused, and it's very contextual, and it presents a solution to a problem that I think everybody from here forward has been wrestling with some of the applications we've seen come in the door in the last 5 years. I want to talk about 3 plans, but I'm going to go out of order from my written report, because I want to save kind of the juiciest morsel for last. There are 3 very important planning documents that are coming through our approval system. One of them is for the borough, and one of them is for the Business Improvement District, and the other one's for Westchester University. We'll start with the Westchester Borough's Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan, because that's going to affect operations and investment. And there's going to be more for me and staff to do about that plan when it comes through. So you should be getting a draft of this plan shortly. And I've sat down, and I hope you have too, with Andy and Ann to talk about the plan and get your one-on-one feedback. There's 5 themes that are going to come across in this plan, starting with the theme of Parks for All. And I think that's an important theme to consider, that all of our parks should be getting equal attention when it comes to maintenance and investment. And the parks are not only incredible resources for the people that can walk to them that live nearby, but our parks also serve as regional attractions. Everhart Park's a great example. It's converting into a regional music festival. in a couple weekends from now. Turk's Head Music Festival will be there. It's going to bring people into the borough who maybe visit us once a year or once every 3 months. And it's a great resource all the rest of the borough for the people that live nearby. So we have to serve both of those constituencies. Next, there's a theme called Go Westchester, where they're talking about connecting together the existing park system. So what you're going to see is unified branding, considerations of trails, and considerations of property acquisition to link together our existing 13 parks to one another. So you know that when you're in Musteller Park, that there's another park in Greenfield not that far away. And you know if you're in Greenfield, you're not that far away from another park up on Market Street. The third one is adding value through programming. And that gets to the issue that has been coming up at council, where we talk about what programs do we want to do in the parks and in which parks, and how do we go about finding vendors to provide those services. So the plan's going to address that issue that's come up here in this room. And the last two things are institutional sustainability and preparing for the future. That's really a question for me and the recreation director and the public works director to consider. Are we investing enough money in our parks to maintain them? Are we investing in bringing people in who have the skills to learn how to maintain the parks properly? Are we investing enough staff resources to do that work monthly, seasonally in the parks to make sure all of our parks are maintained to the same level? So I'm excited about that, having come from, before I got into planning, I was a landscaper and worked at Longwood Gardens for a little bit. So I do enjoy horticulture and having our parks look their best. And I think there's an opportunity for improvement. And the consultants also noted that there is a real difference in the way some of our parks look compared to others. And so one of our goals that I'm committed to is to make sure they all get the same attention. So that's coming soon. You should be getting a draft soon, and we're probably going to be bringing that to council in July for final adoption, and we'll probably have a draft ready in June for your consideration, or the consultants will. Jumping backwards in my report, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Westchester Business Improvement District Authority's 5-year plan renewal. We will be hopefully scheduling a public hearing in this room for July to consider that. And at that moment, council will take feedback from the affected property owners who choose to attend. They're all going to be notified. That's required in the plan, as well as members of the public will be invited to give their feedback on the plan document. And I want to give you some of my feedback on the plan document so far. There's 3 points I want to make. The plan contemplates small extensions of the area of the bid. So I recommend that that map be updated to show which properties are being added or contemplated added to the bid, because those are going to be properties that are going to get a new tax bill of 3 mils for the commercial portion of their properties. So what I mean by that, just to clarify, if you have a mixed use building that has 8 units upstairs and a retail space downstairs, that 3 millage tax rate is only going to apply to the commercial portion of your property. The second point I want to make, and I did make this at the bid meeting that I attended where they approved the draft, is that to their credit, to the bid's credit, they've maintained the 3 mil tax assessment rate for 15 years through proper stewardship, management of resources, finding other resources to help fund operations and investment. However, as we've had conversations in this room before, I don't think that's a realistic long-term sustainable goal to keep a millage rate the same when when the cost of a brick goes up, when the cost of energy goes up, when the cost of labor goes up year over year. So I would suggest that we do something formal from council to say either raise the millage rate a little bit or put some mechanism in to reevaluate the millage rate during that 5-year period. Because right now, if the plan is adopted as is, that millage rate wouldn't change over the next 5 years. And you might be having conversations in this room 2 years from now about the contribution of the borough to the bid.
What about indexing that to inflation? Is that allowed?
Love the idea.
There you go.
We can check on the feasibility of that, but that's an idea. I don't think that a flat millage rate is really a realistic position to take. And lastly, there's something we agree on quite a bit that intersects also with our coming Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan. And it's just about the design and appearance of downtown. So if you look at that plan document, there's a page worth of bullet points about all the things that they want to do downtown. More planters and benches, more places to sit in our downtown area. And that's going to be coming out of your recreation open space plan as well. I think that's a great idea. I think we should start building more places to informally gather in our downtown. We got a great asset for that when 44 West was built. It's private space, but just think about how people congregate there and how that produces, I think, a positive memory for people who are visiting our downtown and might be seeing it for the first time to see everyone gathered in that space. We can do more of that downtown. So that's it for my comments about the Business Improvement District update.
Can I ask a quick question? When you
Sure.
refer to downtown, I think a lot of us think of Gay Street.
Say again,
But there's a
sorry?
lot of opportunities outside of when you're referring to building sort of a park feel in the downtown area. You mentioned 44 West,
Mhm.
which is on Gay Street. Would you be thinking beyond Gay Street, like
I
in the
think the whole,
market
I
and
think the whole town center zoning district would be appropriate for
Thank
that. And lastly, the 800-pound gorilla, the Westchester University Campus Master Plan. I call it that because Westchester University's enrollment and staff adds up to about 18,000 people. And guess what? That's about the population of the borough. Right? So it's almost like a comprehensive plan for another city that lives inside this city, this town, this borough. I'm not going to pretend at this moment in time that I know all the details and I can recall everything while I stand in front of the microphone and give you advice on it. I have started to look at the plan. I have read through several of the appendix and the main document and the supporting master plan itself, which is several 24 by 36 sheets. The Planning Commission has taken up their review in their May meetings. We hope to get just a little bit of feedback going the university's way by the end of next month's business meeting. That's a memo I can write with input from you all, with input from the Planning Commission. We have one professional review done so far from our planning consultant, TCA. And they punted mostly on the issues that are in the appendices, but they did comment extensively on the plan, the physical plan document itself. So I won't repeat those things that are in the TCA document for you right now. But this is a 10-year look forward for development in the planned university campus district in the borough, which, thanks, Bill, he's showing you the map in the borough, and that's what's known as North Campus or the super block. Similar ordinance, this ordinance was adopted in October of 2021, and there's similar districts that were enacted around the same time, same year, in West Goshen Township and in East Bradford Township. So part of this review, we have to reach out to our municipal partners and make sure we're coordinating our comments and we're saying similar things, and we're hearing each other, we're listening to each other as we look at this, because this is a 10-year look forward. The applicant has extended the deadline for opening the hearing to the end of August this year. So I anticipate a conditional use hearing will open in this room sometime in August. It doesn't mean we got to figure it all out by then. Probably going to take comment, continue the hearing, and then at some point approve the plan. Why is this master plan important? Because zoning applies to whatever the university wants to do in that PUC district. And what we'll do is we're going to, when land development plans come in, we're going to look at it, we're going to look at the master plan, and it better comport with what we got. Because if it ain't in the master plan, we're going to deny it outright. So that's why this document's so important. The borough, the people that came before us in 2020, well, you were here, 2018, 2017, went with Ben Franklin, flying the kite. It was very a smart thing to do. As best I can say is to say, hey, we don't want to see piecemeal land development coming in. We want to see it integrated and well thought through in a systemic way. How are you addressing enrollment? How are you addressing housing? How is your instructional and office space? Do you have enough? How are you managing parking and circulation? What are you going to do about stormwater? That thing that we argue with the university about. All these things need to be considered in the context of each other, or else you end up with a mess somewhere down the road. The big issues clearly I've outlined in the document that I've posted online are enrollment projections associated with the housing plan. I see a 5-year enrollment projection that maintains current student populations between 17,000 and 17,500, with about 13,150 more or less being undergraduate full-time students. Okay. That's what the university is telling us. The university experienced some pretty fantastic contraction of undergraduate enrollment right around COVID, but it bounced right back up again and exceeded where it was. But they're projecting in this document static enrollment going forward. So keep that in mind. Their analysis of instructional office space shows that they don't need to add any more office or instructional space. So you won't see any new.
Sean, so just to confirm, they're not going to be adding more people. They're going to try to cap it. Is that going to be definitive?
They are projecting that enrollment is not going to change from where it is today, which is in the range of 17,000 to 17,500. And that number includes part-time students.
What about
and graduate students?
Incoming freshmen.
Those details are in the Appendix A, and we can look those up.
Right.
And get you
And
some analysis on that.
There's a chart, and it does seem to be stable if you look at it, but there's a chart that shows, like, freshmen and then sophomore, because it declines. They drop off a lot of people after they're freshmen, but I think the general comment of it, they're trying to keep it stable, and any growth that they've been saying too is that they're trying to do that. Yeah, graduate.
And I understand that, but for 3 years or 4 years in a row, they said they have the largest incoming freshman class, and yet there was no housing for the last 2 years, which puts the burden on the borough and other municipalities.
Do not disagree.
Right.
So moving to housing, the plan talks about expanding the supply of the Westchester University owned and the affiliated organizations beds from 5,300 and change to 6,200 and change, an increase of about 800 new beds.
So the tricky part, and this goes back to what you're saying, Brian, is, and then we can talk about it later, but it's only like in the next 5 years, it's only like 100 and some beds. Those additional, like, it's phased on what they're doing from a housing piece. There's like, the 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 year plan, and the 10 to 15 year plan. So in the 0 to 5 year plan, it's like 100 and some beds. And then it's, and so on and so on. So those 800 beds aren't really planned to be completely available until like 15 years from now. So that's one thing we'll have to kind of think about and consider, because it's like,
the bulk of those beds are going to land when the university undertakes the demolition reconstruction of Lawrence Hall, because that's a plan to take a space that is committed to instruction, office, and I think dining, thank you, demoing that and building a residential tower, which usually that's probably 500-600 of your beds right there in one building. And there's planned expansion at the South Campus location in East Bradford Township. They said they were going to add stories to the existing buildings. I'm not an architect, but I don't know how you do that. which I thought was interesting. Or the other thing I thought that I learned, and I have to confess, I didn't know this until I opened up the plan. None of the PUC districts in West Goshen Township permit housing.
Hey, Sean, back to the housing, on the map, the PUC map, High Street is the eastern boundary of the property.
Yeah.
All right, so at Rosedale and High, uh, going up the High Street corridor, the university owns all that 3 blocks. Okay, and they're demoing now College Arms. So why is it the PUC over where they actually own all the properties and they're actually renting housing currently?
Because the borough determines the zoning boundaries and made that decision.
But there's housing there now. That's why they're renovating. That's why they have the portable housing down the parking lot, because they emptied out that whole row of apartments.
You're talking about College Arms.
College Arms,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, I think you have it right, that the temporary units on the M1 parking lot are meant to sort of shuffle and allow the university to renovate its spaces in existing buildings. A lot of the dormitories that are owned by the university date to the 60s and 70s, and those are the ones they want to renovate. The dorms that are owned by the affiliated organization are newer and they're not up for a renovation. I think in those renovations too, they're going to be able to add a few beds on the margins of those towers when they do that.
So it's really not the footprint of the university. It's designated on the zoning of the PUC.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The PUC standards apply where the borough
Right, yeah.
adopted those standards.
Because they go from Rosedale all the way up to, begins with an L, Linden Street. They own the taco place, so they could actually tear everything down and put a big building in there. So I just wonder why it didn't go over to where they actually have students living currently. So over to Linden, from Linden Street down to Rosedale is all university property, and there's housing
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
there,
You're
College
talking-
Arms.
You're talking about here.
Why it just doesn't go over on the other side of
Yeah.
on the other side of High Street?
While we're on geography, let me jump to a different point. The university is also contemplating it owns these 3 properties right here that are in yellow. And it's indicated that the 6 properties, I wrote it down, the 9 properties to the north would be slated for acquisition. When that happens, nobody knows. So that's an intention upon the university to kind of, in a way, add this chunk to the super block that they currently, to the holdings they currently own.
Do we have any right to block that transaction, that real estate transaction?
No, you don't have any right to block a real estate transaction as the borough, no.
So we're going to lose less tax revenue.
Oh, yes, if it goes to university ownership, absolutely, yeah, you would lose the ability to tax the property. But you still can charge fees, like a stormwater fee. Just to make that point. Much like a sanitary sewer fee.
Well,
yeah.
Let's hope.
And the 2 other items I want to highlight are items that we're going to get some help, Jim, from borough engineer and traffic engineer, because I read Tom Committa's letter, and we're going to need a couple extra eyes on it. Traffic, parking, circulation together as one thing. Here's something I think is going to be of interest to anyone. I know you, Bernie, have brought it up, and others. I don't know if you've looked at the plan yet. It contemplates the dedication of South Church Street from University to Rosedale and a conversion to a pedestrian zone that would admit emergency vehicles. It looks lovely on the plan. We don't know all the details of it exactly, but check out the plan.
Ramsey, how do you feel about this?
Sean, there's a lot of history of that street.
Yeah.
there was $1 million check already written that we weren't
Yeah.
allowed to take.
Yeah.
They turned that block over to the university.
Yeah.
And Michael Gill said, don't touch that piece of paper,
Yeah.
which I was ready to pick up.
Yeah.
But we did realize that the loss of revenue for parking
Mhm.
would be not enormous, but it's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And they're trying to put a green in there, which makes all the sense in the world. But what I was trying to do was use a 5-year plan of like $200,000 a year, revenue for parking. It came up to $1 million, and the university thought it was a great idea. And all of a sudden, it wasn't. So that's why it's still there. A short story. So the check was written. It was sitting on the desk, and we weren't allowed to pick it up.
So if you weren't aware, you are now, that portion of the street is, they're contemplating owning that and making it easier for their circulation needs. So we don't have to make any decisions tonight, obviously, about that one. So in one of the appendixes, there's a full parking supply and demand study. This I thought was interesting. The plan contemplates a very small reduction in available parking supply from 3,700 and change to about 3,500 and change total parking spaces. Right now, their utilization they studied one date. And don't be alarmed, but that's how parking studies usually are done. They do a very comprehensive look at it on a weekend and on different times of day, but they're only out there counting in a very narrow sample. That they had, I forget the number, but the utilization rate was low enough that it didn't alarm me. Like a high utilization rate is like above 90%. If you're driving down your neighborhood on South Walnut and utilization's over 90%, the way you experience that is you drive around the block looking for a place to park, and you're burning extra fuel, you're getting frustrated, and you're parking farther away from your destination. That's an example of where demand is beating up supply, or you want utilization rate to be down near 80%. I saw it, and I can't remember the number, but it looked like a good utilization rate that they had observed. And they are, it's as interesting. This is what I want our traffic team to look at. They said, hey, we know our supply is going down, but we're adding beds to campus. And we're not adding overall enrollment. Therefore, students who are presumably today commuting would be living on campus and not have to have their car here. So therefore, we'll be okay with the 200 less parking spaces, which is only about 7% of the total. But just consider that. That's the argument that I read in the plan document. And lastly, stormwater. I just want to touch on that. I know it's a touchy subject with the university, but that will be decided soon by people in black robes, I hope. I want to be clear about what they had to do and what we can do to evaluate it, because they didn't fully design all of their stormwater systems. They can't, obviously, until they know exactly how much impervious area they're adding. They do a soil test and they find out how much water perks in the soil. It's only after you do those things that you can actually size the stormwater facility that you want to contemplate building. So they just use a real rough estimate. Engineers do this a lot, where the contributing area was between 5-to-1 or 8-to-1. And they built a plan that said, hey, if we're going to add this, they're proposing adding on to the Sykes Student Union in West Goshen Township on an area that's green right now. So they're going to have to add stormwater management. So the plan just depicts an area that is 20% the size of the addition from plan view, colored it in blue and said, we're going to put the stormwater facility somewhere in this location. That's really the first step you have to do anyway. You got to find the space to do it in. But don't think that we're going to be able to review this and say that stormwater system is going to work or not. None of it's been designed. but I'm still going to have the engineer look at it and just see what their opinion is on stormwater. So those were my issues with the plan that stuck out to me in my first read through: traffic circulation, enrollment in housing, stormwater, Church Street, and the plan to, just to let you know, they plan at some point to purchase a few more properties on High Street. And as Mr. McGinnis said, that means that tax revenue will go away. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Any other comments? Public comment? All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to old business. Under discussion, a motion to appoint borough manager and a member of the Public Safety Committee of the Borough Council to serve on Good Fellowship Ambulance Company Municipal Advisory Board.
All right, Lisa, are you out there? Can she hear us? All right, we'll chatted with Lisa last night after our meeting just to make sure we were all clear, because I think the reason we put this on discussion was because the one line said appoint the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and the other line it said appoint just somebody. And she did agree to be the appointee. She said it's probably like once a quarter or something like that. So as the chair, she thought that was fine to have that be the role. So, you know, if that's where we wanted to just gain alignment on who was going to start, unless Bernie, you have some burning desire to.
No, thank you.
All right. So Lisa Dorsey's going to do it.
So, okay, so are we going to make that the chair, or are we just going to make that a member of that committee? Because let's say if the chair of that committee can't do it.
Next time. Yeah, I did probably, yeah, members, fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. So we'll go forth with that motion, and then just know that Lisa has been the one who is going to step up to the plate for this first round.
So would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
We have a second. All right, Mr. Metric, please call the question.
Ms. Dorsey,
Yes.
Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Travis,
Yes.
Ms. Shimoni,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes. Okay, next item for discussion is a motion to approve contract for human resource consulting services.
Mr. President, I would like to amend this motion to include the cap of 40,000, the limit that we discussed in executive section.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Metric, please call the question. Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Dorsey,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep calling your name because you are attending the meeting, and if you're non-responsive, I have to keep calling your name. Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis.
Yes.
Mr. Travis,
Yes.
Ms. Shimoni,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item B, motion to approve the May 2022, 2025 consent agenda.
I'm going to make that a motion. Let's do it.
Second.
Mr. Metric, please call the question.
Ms. Dorsey,
Yes.
Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Travis.
Yes.
Ms. Shimoni,
Yes.
and Mr. McCoy.
Yes. All right, is there any other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 8:15. Thank you. Have a good evening.